We are here attending the second meeting of the Commission on Integrity of Elections, Security and Democracy. I think you are all aware as to the challenges and difficulties we've had with elections and democracy, sometimes linked with violence. And we decided to look at this issue a little over about a year ago. Little did we know how topical and how prominent this issue is going to be. We believe that election without integrity, elections that are rigged, elections that are corrupt, creates enormous problems for societies. And sometimes, of course, the nature of the elections also reflects the society itself. But if you manage to organize elections with integrity, you can strengthen democracy and avoid some of the downside. We often see violence, and often it happens because either people believe the elections were not fair, rigged, or the opposition do not accept the results and do not accept the rules of the game. We often see situations where people come in and try to count the ballots on the day of the elections, but election process starts long before the actual day of the voting. And some of the games governments and politicians play, or the rigging, happens long before that day. And we are looking into these issues with the expectation that we will be able to come up with some recommendations that will help society improve elections and thus strengthen security, stability, and democracy. I will pause here and we will take your questions. I think we've also put out some documents on the backgrounds of the commissioners and information on the commission. The floor is open.
My name is Triska Hamid from Mead. Mr. Anand, the Arab Spring, do you think it has progressed the democratic process in the region, or has it set back political reform? And do you think the governments in the region have responded effectively?
I think we need to look at it on a case-by-case basis, even though there are lots of movements in the region. I think one thing that is certain is that the population have made it clear that they want to have a say on how they are governed and by whom they are governed. They've made it clear that they would want to see democratic rotation of leadership. They have made it clear that they are not satisfied with the economic and social conditions under which they live. Of course, now is a difficult period as you go through with changes and reform. We are at early stages yet. Tunisia is much more advanced after its elections. We are monitoring the situation in Egypt and in other parts. And they may all do it in their own individual way. What is important is that the reform and the change the people are demanding should be delivered, and hopefully it will be delivered in an organized and peaceful manner. If the people feel that the changes they pushed for are not being respected or are not forthcoming, we may be in for a much more difficult period.
Why was the commission established now only in 2011? Was this in light of the Arab revolutions, or was there a premeditated intention to establish it prior to the revolutions?
In fact, the commission was established last year, and we held our first meeting in March. We held our first meeting in March 2010 in South Africa. So we had identified the problem and decided that something should be done about it. So in a way, it's a coincidence that the Arab awakening also took place soon thereafter. And as I said, this makes the issue much more important and pressing.
Hi, I'm Peter Townsend from Gulf Times. I was wondering, first of all, why you decided to hold this meeting in Doha. And secondly, I was wondering if I could get a word on the role of the Gulf states in the Arab Spring and also the future of democracy in the Gulf.
We had an agreement that whenever there was a hard question, I would answer it, Secretary General. Well, we are hosting this meeting here because we are enjoying the courtesy of the government of Qatar, who extended an invitation to the Secretary General and the Commission to meet here. And we thought it was adequate to accept the invitation. We don't convey any political meaning to the fact that we are meeting here. This is a convenient place to meet, but in a sense, the way that, and this was decided a long time ago, but as Secretary General Annan said, you know, there is a rather fortunate coincidence between the fact that we have undertaken this endeavor of this commission and that we are seeing a significant historical movement towards democracy in this region of the world. So I think it's a happy coincidence, Mr. Secretary General. What was the second part of your question? Probably that was easier.
About the role of the Gulf states in the Arab Spring and the future of democracy in the Gulf states.
Well, I think that's up to the Gulf states to decide whether they want to play a positive, constructive, looking forward role in building democracy. I mean, all the members of this commission are true believers in democracy. That's why we are doing this work. I think democracy is a very high ideal, but it's up to every country and to every society to decide when and how they go about building democracy.
So the question is, authoritarian regimes are incapable of producing democracy. So what is the perception of the Commission towards what's happening in Syria and in other parts of the Arab world, such as Algeria, in Sudan, for example? Are these regimes capable of achieving democracy? And will the military intervention play a role in achieving such democracies?
Well, first, I think we should never concede that any people or any country is incapable of achieving a state of democratic governance. It's certainly an aspiration, I think, for citizens all over the world to be able to participate through a representative fashion in their own governance, and I can't think of anywhere in the world where that should not be feasible. Different countries are at different stages, I think, of realizing their democratic aspirations. Some actually are in a transition from authoritarian regimes, one hopes, to more democratic ones. Unfortunately, other countries are experiencing the reverse. They have sometimes relatively recent or consolidating democracies that are now slipping into authoritarianism. So I think it's all very contextual and it's achievable, but it's more difficult, I think, in countries that have a long entrenched historic authoritarian form of governance. It takes the courage, I think, of people to stand up against the suppression of their rights to challenge these regimes. As for the role of the military, again, military, I think, in a democratic regime should be under the oversight of civilian rules, not the other way around. And various militaries can play a positive, a neutral, or a very negative role in the reversal of authoritarianism, and I think we've seen examples of all of these different roles.
أنا بس عندي رغبة أن أضيف إلى ما تفضلت به السيدة أربور إنه يجب ألا نفقد الأمل من إمكانية التدرج في الإصلاح في البلدان العربية. لو نظرنا إلى وضع العالم العربي لرأينا أن هناك عدة نماذج للتحول الديمقراطي. في أحد هذه النماذج كان هناك تقريبا انتقال سلمي للسلطة كما حصل في تونس، ثم توج هذا الانتقال بانتخابات نزيهة، والآن نرى تشكيل حكومة ورئاسة جديدة، وأيضا نأمل في دستور جديد. في نماذج أخرى كان الانتقال عنيفا كما حصل في ليبيا وأدى إلى خسائر بشرية كبيرة، ولكن هناك أيضا نماذج حيث كان هناك إصلاح تدريجي كما حصل في المغرب وإلى حد ما في الأردن، حيث استجابة لرغبة الجماهير قامت السلطة بإدخال إصلاحات قد تبدو صغيرة في بداية الأمر، ولكن مع الوقت إذا تم التدرج في هذه الإصلاحات وتعميقها ممكن أن يحدث عندنا انتقال سلمي دون خسائر بشرية فادحة. أما فيما يتعلق بالتدخل الخارجي، عندنا أيضا نماذج مختلفة للتدخل الخارجي. عندنا النموذج العراقي وهو تشوبه العديد من العيوب كما نعرف، لا أحد يستطيع أن يقول أن ما نتج هو ديمقراطية بأقل كلفة ممكنة. ويجب أن نتذكر أن التدخل الخارجي يخضع ليس فقط لأمور تتعلق بحماية الديمقراطية أو بالانتقال السلمي، ولكن أيضا يخضع لمصالح الدول التي ترغب في مثل هذا التدخل. في جميع الأحوال انتهاكات حقوق الإنسان غير مقبولة ويجب أن تتوقف، ويجب أن نبحث عن الكلفة الأقل في التحول الديمقراطي. شكرا.
You talk of international support for holding fair elections.
Could you tell me which paper are you with? What's it?
I'm Rajesh Mishra from Qatar Tribune newspaper. So you talk of international support for holding fair elections in the countries, stop rigging and everything. So how can you achieve that? Will it not mean international interference in national politics, and will it be acceptable to the people of the country?
First and foremost, the responsibility for ensuring clean and fair elections belongs to the government and the people of the country concerned. They should make sure they have the right laws, the institutions, the independent electoral commission to get that done. The international community can help and often is invited in to help. And they often do it with the agreement with the government and the country concerned. I'm not aware of any elections where the monitors have imposed themselves without working out the details with the government. And I think the cooperation between international observers and local observers, particularly in situations where there is contentious relationship, can be extremely helpful. And this has been used in many parts of the world without the government and the people concerned feeling trampled upon by outside interference.
I just wonder what is your actual role in the Arab Revolution and how you are going to influence the state of affairs in this, in the evolving democracies, and what you are going to discuss in Doha.
We are not here to get involved in the Arab awakening. Of course, like everybody else, we followed it very closely. As I indicated earlier, we started our work about a year before the events here began to unfold. But democracy, elections, and security and stability of societies is something that has been of concern to us. I think it's good that we meet in this region at this time, given what is happening. I think we will learn something, and I hope it will be a useful backdrop and background to our work. And I would hope when our report comes out, the peoples around the world, and in this region in particular, will pay close attention to the report, which we will hope to submit sometime next year.
Mr. Annan, the state of Qatar will, within a year or so, will be entering into a democratic experience. has the Qatari authorities or the Qatari Commission for Elections discussed with your commission or with the commission to enhance and to promote such an experience in the state of Qatar?
I know that there will be elections next year, but we have not discussed this with the authorities, nor did we come here to discuss it. I have been informed that the elections will take place, but we did not come here to offer assistance in the elections, nor has a request been made to us. And in fact, if a request were to be made, it will have to go to other bodies and not us. We don't do direct election monitoring. We have Vidar Helgesen here from IDEA. He and the organizations he deals with do quite a lot of election monitoring. So the answer is no.
I don't think we're at a point where we can start determining how the transition in Syria is going to happen. I think it has been determined already by the high level of violence. If this is the question, I mean, it's what matters is the result. What we would like to see in Syria is democracy, is human rights respected, is people participating in decisions that affect their lives. And this is the ultimate result that we will all seek.
And it is never good news when a regime has to turn the gun on its own people. It may work in the short term, but in the long run, it's always a wrong policy. Thank you.